Today, I'm out here in an area of the forest where fire has come through, chased off most of the wildlife, and burned up almost all of the vegetation. Would you believe me if I told you that this fire coming through might actually help this forest thrive? Let me explain. In this episode, all about ecological succession. Ecological succession is simply the series of events by which life comes back after some type of disturbance. These disturbances can range from something small, like several trees falling over in a forest, to some catastrophic event, like a massive volcanic eruption. Before we get too far into these types of changes, I think it's important for us to quickly review what makes up an ecosystem. An ecosystem is made up of the living and non-living or biotic and abiotic factors of a given area. We will be talking about communities a lot in this episode. A community is all of the living organisms in an ecosystem. Communities are made up of several different populations of organisms. The more, the better. This is called biodiversity. A population is the group of individuals of the same species. Like each and every squirrel that is in this area would be the population of squirrels. And don't forget to include all of the plant and microbe friends in your list of populations. So ecological succession is how a community changes over time, starting right after a disturbance. We tend to think of succession as taking a really long time, and some types do take a really long time, but sometimes it may only take a season or two. The most important thing to learn is that succession is all about change. Disturbances happen in ecosystems all the time, every day. A crazy windstorm, a flood, a fire, a mudslide, or even a bulldozer. The crazy thing that we're going to look at is even after these unpredictable events, ecologists keep seeing orderly, even predictable changes in the ecosystem. These disturbances in an ecosystem can vary in intensity quite a bit. So let's start off by looking at the most impactful and most destructive. Things like an asteroid hitting the surface of the Earth, a giant glacier sliding across the landscape and taking everything with it, or a volcano spewing molten rock, all causing complete devastation. The recovery from these types of disturbances is called primary succession, when organisms populate the area after a disturbance for the first time. In primary succession, there is nothing left that is living, which includes the soil. Remember all the stuff that creates and lives in soil? Yeah, all those guys are gone. All that remains are the abiotic factors, so really just rock. I know what you're thinking. Who would try to live in a spot like that? A lot of organisms don't mind building a life in the more inhospitable neighborhoods. These pioneer species are often prokaryotes or protists, followed by non-vascular plants. There is one really big advantage to no one else wanting to live in your neighborhood: no competition. Let's take a look at one type of pioneer species, this lichen. They have begun colonizing this bare rock. Let's walk through this example as if this colony of lichen and this rock were on a newly formed island caused by tectonic activity, like the newly formed Tongan Island that appeared in the South Pacific in 2014. One day, no island, and then the next day, a tiny little weird island just popped out of the ocean. You know, basically. Back to the lichen. Lichen are able to survive on bare rock because they are able to withstand harsh abiotic factors. Lichen is composed of two different species coexisting together, algae and fungus. They live in a mutually beneficial relationship called a symbiotic relationship. The algae can photosynthesize and create glucose carbohydrates, or energy, which it shares with the fungus. The fungus can absorb water like a sponge, so when it rains, the fungus can hold on to that water. The fungus can also release enzymes outside of its cells onto the rocks, which start to break down the rock to release needed minerals that can then be absorbed by the algae and fungi. So what's the big deal? How do we go from these strange little lichen to an eventual community full of a variety of organisms? Well, over time that lichen will die and decay, but not before reproducing and continuing to colonize the surrounding rocks. As they die and decay, they start to produce a very, very thin layer of soil that we call humus. And soil is everything. Because we now have this thin layer of soil, mosses and smaller plant seeds carried to the island by wind, water, or in bird poo can take root in this thin layer. As this process continues to happen, those mosses and smaller plants will reproduce, die, and decay as well, increasing the nutrient content and depth of the soil. So you now have even thicker soil with even more nutrients, and it can hold even more water, which means even larger plants with bigger roots can survive. As this process continues over time, each new species is changing the environment, which is great because it becomes less hostile, but it also becomes less suitable for the previous species. Sorry, lichen, and you worked so hard. This means the previous species is outcompeted and may not be in that habitat anymore. As those small plants grow, they will be shading the lichen. No sunlight, no lichen. It's important to remember that when we're talking about primary ecological succession, we are talking about plants pretty much exclusively, because without plants, the animals in a community have no chance at survival. Primary succession takes a long, long time, like hundreds, even thousands of years in some places. This is because soil takes time. Soil may seem lame to you, but it's alive and complicated, and we wouldn't be here without it. So the lichen is replaced by things like grasses, then shrubs, and eventually trees. All the while, other populations have moved in, based on the available plant life and other factors. And then we have these climax species at the end. But are we done? Does it just stay like that forever? Not a chance. Remember, ecosystems are constantly changing. Some species, like a redwood tree, is big enough to withstand something like a fire sweeping through. But most species are going to be removed by these disturbances, and some of that process is going to start over, which leads us to secondary succession. If you're still here liking this video, let us know, and hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Secondary succession isn't the next step after primary succession has made an area livable after some catastrophic event. It's usually the first response after a smaller disturbance, like a windstorm, flood, chainsaw-happy land developer, or even this fire has removed or destroyed the vegetation, but the soil remains. Even this relatively small patch of forest that has been removed has created a different microclimate than the rest of the forest. This area will now have more sunlight, slightly higher temperatures, less protection from weather, and the soil composition is different because of the added nitrogen and carbon from the burned vegetation. So as a result of the fire, the mix of plants will become different, the soil will become different, and the mix of animals will become different because different animals will want to hang out in this open space because it suits their needs better. In secondary succession, you will see the same type of progression in communities, from mosses to grasses and smaller plants to shrubs and larger trees, and all the animals those changes in vegetation bring. Secondary succession could potentially always be happening in any given area because disturbances big and small are so unpredictable. Climax communities show up once an ecosystem is strong and biodiverse and in the late stages of succession. But the idea of an ecosystem becoming stable is never really accurate because of all of the factors, big and small, that are constantly changing. Biodiversity is created by moderate disturbances over time. This is due to each mid-level disturbance creating its own habitat at its own stage of succession. More biodiversity means more stability and healthier ecosystems, which is one of the reasons the Forest Service performs prescribed burns like the one that came through this exact area. By next season, there will be new plants and new animals that call this spot their home. So the next time change comes your way, embrace it, like our lichen friend. And if you want to learn more science, you can check out this video next.